Welcome everybody to the 8th Weekly Dialogue. In this series, we get to know better our members and their change-making initiative in a question and answer format. In the first 20 minutes, I will have a chat with our guest and will ask him some questions. And in the next 20 minutes, we will open to the floor and let anyone present ask our guests any questions that they may have. The first two segments will be recorded for those who are not able to be here today. The last segment will be 20 minutes chat with GM, where anyone here can ask Vincent any questions that they may have, or raise ideas, or give feedback to him directly. This segment will not be recorded. So now let's get started. Our guest for today is Ding Jie. He is a scientist and founder of Starter Culture, food manufacturing and consultancy company, specializing in fermented food and beverages. It also provides training, events, and R&D solutions. Ding Jie is also the Vice President of the Humanist Society Singapore, and that is what we're going to focus on today. Thank you, Ding Jie, for agreeing to be our guest today. I've been reading the articles on the Humanist Society Singapore website. They're like 50 articles. I haven't finished reading them yet, but already I've got so many questions for you. So let's start with the basic. For those who know nothing about humanism, can you tell us what is humanism and why is it important for our society?
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me here this afternoon. To me, humanism really is a way of life. Is a philosophy of getting through life, of doing the things that keep you alive. It's a way of finding meaning and fulfillment and satisfaction in life. In the absence, and perhaps this is a key disclaimer, in the absence of religion. So there's nothing, to me at least, there's nothing very airy or abstract about it. It's just how do people live their lives, live meaningful lives, live ethical lives without religion. We think that's important because the reality is that about a fifth of Singaporeans identify as non-religious. So 5 people in a room, one person doesn't have is likely to not have a religion, and that is important for everyone else, the 80%, to understand what makes this 20% of people tick. It's also important for us to perhaps draw certain lessons from it and look at how we can apply certain ethical principles to the broader society.
Okay, so humanism seems to be a community of people with no religion. Does humanism have a creed, a set of beliefs that all humanists must believe in order to call themselves humanists?
So, it is quite the oxymoron, really. To live your life without dogma, and then to fall back to a dogmatic definition of humanism, is perhaps quite counterintuitive. So, in general, we don't really have, any kind of, commandment or grail or text that we go back to. What we have in general are what we like to call, guiding principles, or officially the term is a minimum statement. And that minimum statement is something that most humanists can agree upon. And the reality is that even if you don't agree upon, there are 3 minimum statements. They deal with, human beings being able to, to live ethical, fulfilling lives without religion. Human beings are able to be moral, to craft moral laws, again, without religion. And we can live our lives looking at evaluating reason, evidence, and science without necessarily relying on divine intervention or anything of supernatural sort. The reality is that you may take like 2 out of 3 of the statements, and you are fine to call yourself a humanist. We believe, part of the working principle of being a humanist is that everyone is sort of a work in progress. No one is that ideal, platonic ideal a person of a humanist, and we all have our own bias and assumptions that we are all working to address. So that's something that is perfectly fine as well.
Okay, cool. So how did you become a humanist, or how does one become a humanist?
I realized that I was an atheist a long time ago, and I think that was probably in primary school, when I attended a Catholic primary school. So yeah, I mean, at Catholic primary school, just I used to say, grace. I used to sing the hymns for a while, and I think when I got to primary three, things just clicked. I mean, my family is quite traditional Chinese, so they pray on your special occasions. There's an altar at my grandparents' place. So yeah, but I think at primary three, that was when I started reading about science as well and looking at biology, and things just clicked that all religions either had to be all true or mutually exclusive. So that didn't quite add up for me, and that was when I realized that the secular or non-religious, non-supernatural way of looking at life was a better model for making life decisions than following a religion. The term humanism really only came up when I started going to when I started university in the UK, and that was when I was volunteering for the student the ATA Society, and that was when I was first exposed to the term humanism as a way of shaping and pulling collective good together. So the challenge was that atheism in and of itself doesn't really explain a lot about the person. It just says that the person doesn't have belief in a god or multiple gods. Humanism, on the other hand, text adds a bit more to that and explains certain parts of ethics, certain parts of life, of human life, certain parts of morality, and that is and that word has since stuck with me since then.
Okay, so how does a person, say somebody comes across and identifies with two or three of these minimum statements and say, okay, I think I want to become a humanist. Is there a process to do?
No, just, I mean, the process of being a humanist is to live your life as a good human. Okay. There's no, we don't have a, I mean, there's no formal, ceremony, no baptism of sorts. What we try to do at the Humanist Society as a formal society is to provide a network and community of, peers, individuals who think in a similar way. There's no induction process. There's no orientation to being a humanist. We think that it really is an introspective journey, and we don't see ourselves guiding people into it, but really want people to explore it on your own and discover it for themselves why and how they're humanists. Of course, we do, when we do have our social events, our activities, our programs, we do invite people to come to talk about it, talk about their experiences, and essentially celebrate human life, celebrate living without religion. And what we find is that regardless of race, language, or religion, if I borrow a phrase, we all face the same very human problems, right? We all have commitments, have family commitments, work commitments. We all have bills to pay. We all face the same stresses in life. And along the way, we found that, hey, maybe perhaps this humanist way of looking at it, humanistic way of looking at life or dealing with issues, may come in handy for people, whether or not they are religious or irreligious.
So what I hear you say is that Humanist Society provides a network or community for humanists to know each other and to help each other to face the very human problems that each person faces. Would that be right?
Yeah, and that was what we wanted to do when we were founded 12 years ago. Okay. And that was really because we saw that there was almost like a gap in the market, right? If you were Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, you had your own community, your place of worship that you probably go back to. But for a fifth of Singaporeans, there was no such organic community, and it was especially more important for people who may have left their faith. People who have left their faith find that they suddenly, they may be brought up in this community, but when they one day realize that, hey, maybe this I don't believe in this, or I don't subscribe to certain tenets or ethics, they realize that they lose that entire part of their life, and that can be quite devastating. So, part of what we want to do was to be able to provide this community for people who, need new friends, need new community.
That is I identify very much with that, because I was a Catholic for 30 years before I lost my faith, and yes, I agree. You really do lose a great sense of your identity and the community that you have. I want to ask this question. So religions, most religions, I think, they have rituals that their worshippers, their believers go through on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Does Humanist society have any such of these rituals, or if not, what are the activities that you guys do for your members?
So that's a very interesting question, and I say that because if we look at our the history of humans, right? We have seen, humans have had rituals and ceremonies for as long as humans have existed. And that is quite a curious thing, right? So when we, as humanists, we want to investigate, what makes us human in the absence of religion. Rituals and ceremonies, while most of us would think or would brush off as a very religious thing to do, the reality is that it's a very human thing to do. And we've tried to bring some of that back in to the secular non-religious society. We think that people in general appreciate marking certain milestones in their life. And we think that it is this marking of milestones that eventually, turns into a ritual or ceremony. So, perhaps the most common annual ritual that we all go through is birthday celebrations. So that is almost ritualistic, and really it's a very arbitrary marking of one cycle around the sun. But that is that, right? And we think that beyond just being human, we think that ritual ceremonies, festivities have a social role in bringing people together. So we're trying to introduce some of that. We do Darwin Day activities when we try to bring people closer to nature. So we do nature walks, we do beach cleanups. On Humanist Day, we usually bring our friends, our partner organizations, our allies together to look at the state of humanism or the state of secularism, or even interfaith relations. We look at how we have done some humanist weddings before, so we do a secular, solemnization, and that really is to celebrate life, love, marriage, and the future, again, to find a way to do it without religion. And we think that this is and perhaps also interestingly is also funerals. A lot of funerals or rituals surrounding death and loss are marked with religion, and we're also exploring for a secular solution for people who maybe just want something that's, I won't say no frills, but without bringing religion into it. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good thing, because I have been also thinking, if I were to pass away, what would I want my wake or funeral to look like? Considering that I'm not religious. I know my family is Catholic, but I don't think I would want a Catholic wake or funeral.
Yeah, I think mine would be a buffet. I think I mean you know me for my background in food, so I think that if like I want my funeral to be a celebration of I think it should be a celebration of life. I think people should come together and remember the person that has passed. And I think my story would be probably told through food, and one of the quintessential Chinese funeral food is curry chicken. For whatever reason, when you go to a funeral, there's always curry chicken. And I think like for me, I would want to have curry chicken at my funeral.
I'll get all the people attending my funeral to eat rescue food.
Yeah, just like eat your favorite foods, right? Like curry chicken, maybe prata, vegetarian bee hoon, just like a snippets of favorite dishes of the person. I think that's a very fun way of maybe a macabre, but to me it would be a fun way of getting to know someone or remembering someone through their favorite dishes. But yeah.
Everybody pick a dish that everybody can eat.
Yeah. The sad thing is that I won't be able to eat it. So I would very much like to eat my own curry chicken at my own funeral, but unfortunately that is not practical.
I'll be there to eat it.
Yes, please come by.
Okay, so how I gather that you, like myself, for example, I'm only now starting to understand what humanism is and what is this term is. I gather that there must be a lot of people in Singapore who are not religious and also have not heard of humanism. But how many members does Humanist Society currently have?
So for practical reasons, we have an annual rolling membership. And what we do see is that people sign up for a year and sometimes they lapse, so they forget to renew. So they fall out as members. But they still continue to join our events, our ceremonies and whatnot. So because of that, our membership sort of like fluctuates, especially at the time of renewal and membership lapsing. But I think we have seen over the past 12 years, we have seen about 700, 800 people walk through our doors. Annually, we maintain about 80 to 90 people, paid members at least. So it is quite challenging to gauge membership. And of course, when we look at the population census, the census shows us that a fifth of Singaporeans identify as non-religious. Not everyone sort of practices non-religiosity to different extents. And the challenge, I think, of the Humanist Society and particularly in membership is that it's sort of like forming and I've used this analogy before, it's sort of like forming a football club for people who don't watch football. So if you watch football, you support a particular club, maybe Manchester United, maybe Liverpool, maybe you support a particular country playing under a certain flag. It's very easy for supporters of maybe Spanish football to all get together. But if you don't watch football, there is no football club for you, or rather there's no perhaps intrinsic incentive for you to want to meet other non-football watchers and not watch football together. So that perhaps seems quite strange. So that is something that that's one of the questions that we always ask ourselves. How do we get people with very diverse opinions, diverse perspective on the world to come together under one umbrella, and that is that they share the same humanistic ethics and principles, and of course that's also why I appreciate A Good Space, because it's sort of the same similar, gathering very different very diverse change makers with very different agendas and all to do common good.
I have one more question for you before we segue to the next segment. What is the annual membership fee for Humanist Society, and how do you create value for your members?
So the annual membership fee is $20, quite cheap, I think. It's $10 for students. Free for students. Oh wow, I think we are we are giving quite a bit of discount. Free for students, $10 for retirees. You sign up at the middle of the calendar year is also $10. Value is something that we also continue to ask ourselves. And that's something that we are looking that we spent 10 years incubating, 10 years sort of building up our resources, building up our network and contacts. And I think this is where we are sort of at the edge of right, we have invested this much, or whether we have saved this much, right? How can we then start to create even more value and grow more? So previously, so we're really at this sort of growth stage. One thing that we're looking to do is to create. So earlier I spoke a bit about counseling programs or programs to help people who are in need and who may prefer these programs to be secular. That's something that we are looking to craft out using some of the resources that we now have. I spoke about secular weddings and ceremonies. So we do from time to time have an officiant, or what we call a celebrant, to conduct some of these humanist or secular weddings, or even secular funerals. We're looking to expand that. So we're looking to get people trained. We're currently in talks with ROM to see if we can we officially have secular celebrants. It's quite a mouthful. Secular celebrants on the list, because today if you go to ROM, you want to get a secular wedding, you cannot. Your weddings are either officiated by a religious leader or from a PA grassroots lead. So that if you're secular or humanist, that is your only choice. But people sometimes don't want that, because you don't know this this grassroots person. They may or may not share your same values or same perspective on marriage and future and love. So people want some a celebrant who identifies with them, and perhaps even someone from their own community. And that's perhaps something that we want to bring in, or want to build to add value to our members. We've also been in talks with a good space friends to look at how we can finally get a more permanent space for the Human Society. So for the past 10 years, we've been working remotely from our laptops, from cafes. Can we finally get a space that we can perhaps start to look at getting perm staff in to run our day-to-day operations, to continue to help us grow, and perhaps have also an event space that we can use for our members to socialize and network. So we are asking ourselves that question, and I think being 12 years old, we are finally at the stage where we can start to think about this.
Okay, good. So I actually have more questions to ask you, but for now I want to open to the floor. I have more.
Sure.
Yeah. But now I want to open to the floor and see if anyone here has any questions that they want to ask you. So members of the audience, if any one of you would like to ask Jie any question, just unmute yourself and ask.
I see Vincent has a question.
But do you actually know the process of killing a chicken? Like, can you actually answer that question, Ding Jie?
Yeah. So I think this question came about because we had dinner. Vince and I had dinner last night, and I was sharing that I have chickens at home. And recently I had to, well, not I had to, but I killed one of them to cook. So and I was sharing that it was I mean, this whole project to me was my attempt, or my yeah, my attempt at living pseudo living off the land, and quite inspired by Daniel's freegan adventures. And what I wanted to see was, what would it be like to just grow your own crops or eat your own vegetables. If you have chicken, eat livestock, and be able to eat that. And it was also for me to investigate my own thoughts on eating meat. So I mean, I consider myself omnivorous. I eat meat, I eat vegetables. But what I find too often is that in today's modern, and I think that maybe Daniel will agree with me on this, in today's modern consumerist lifestyle, people expect to eat whatever they want, whenever they want, right? So if I want, watermelon, I snap my fingers, I should be able to order it on, online, or if you walk to the supermarket and expect to see watermelon. But the reality is that it's not watermelon season all around. And depending on the time of year, grocery supermarkets may have to ship watermelons from different parts of the world just to be able to meet that 24/7, 365 demand for watermelons to be on the shelf. And I think that is fundamentally not sustainable. I mean, beyond the carbon footprint that kind of logistical chain generates, right? It is not a sustainable way of consumption. And I think with regard to meat eating in particular, modern consumers are too far removed from the ethics and the termination of life aspect of meat consumption. And for me, that was, I wanted to see, okay, can I kill my own chicken and then cook it and eat it? So some context. I'm not just randomly going on killing chickens. So to describe the process, so it's actually quite sobering. So we use and I particularly learned this from just like watching YouTube. You can learn anything off the internet these days. So you would hang the chicken upside down. So some if you look at modern farms, poultry farms, or at least your small farmhouses, they use a cone. So the chicken slides into the cone, the neck is exposed. So you cut the neck or you slit the neck. You allow the chicken to bleed out. There's not much blood, so it's not crazy. Once the chicken bleeds out, you will then take the chicken, you will blanch it in hot water. So the hot water helps to with the defeathering process. So you blanch it for about half a minute, and that's when the feathers will come out. So you just keep plucking feathers out. And once the feathers are plucked out, that's when you need to start to clean up the insects. And that is quite tricky. So you ideally want to remove the chicken guts in a way that also doesn't puncture the innards, because you don't want to ruin the innards, because those also can be eaten. And you also don't want to puncture the intestine in a way that gets manure everywhere, because that can contaminate the meat. So you need to carefully cut away around the body cavity, remove all the innards, and then you want to keep the innards that can be eaten. The gizzards need to be cleaned up a bit. So the gizzard is an organ that helps the chicken, because birds don't have teeth, so they can't really chew food. The gizzard helps. The gizzard stores hard rocks, or small rocks, grains, sand that the bird uses to help grind food material down. So that can be eaten. The gizzard can be eaten. The liver is quite nice. Heart's quite nice. The lung is lung. The chicken comb is edible. The traditionally in farms, the testes is also edible. So you want to save all of that, and then you don't eat intestines, you don't eat the gallbladder. So that was what we did. So for that rooster, the body we used to make a ginseng chicken soup, Korean inspired samgyetang. So that was quite nice. the meat itself was quite bland and quite tough. So that was something that that I learned. But the innards were quite nice. So we did yakitori, very simple yakitori style, liver heart comb dish. Yeah. That was I mean, I think the rooster lived a very happy life, walking around the backyard, the coop, with other rooster friends. So so yeah, that was a celebration of a rooster's life.
Okay, so I think I like about these weekly dialogues is that all these interesting things that come out. Okay, Ning has a question for you. Ning, you want to unmute yourself and just say the question? Ning? Okay, never mind. Let me read out the question for you. So she feels that every religion teaches everyone to be a better person, being more human. Is this also the philosophy of work that you do, minus the cultural and traditional observance?
So I mean, this is where we may disagree on what religion actually teaches, but if I would say that if your religion or someone else's religion teaches them to be good, that's all fine. Humanism isn't so much about teaching people to be good, but trusting that human beings can be good and making sure that humans have the right framework to be good. What I mean is that you fundamentally can be a neutral person, but sometimes your environment may tilt you in a certain way, and the environment may be unfair. The environment may be arduous, and we think that is not a good sort of atmosphere or environment for human beings to thrive in. So teaching someone to be good in that kind of environment to us isn't very useful. What we try to do is look at not just the individual, but the collective and the system of humans. And we do this, or rather we investigate this when we say that humanism is fundamentally a equitable and democratic philosophy. So we think that these principles of equity, of justice and democracy helps human beings to thrive, and we think that this is the best slate for human beings to be good, and they will naturally be good because the system is good. So I mean, of course, good is a very vague term here. We can all talk for another hour about what good means and what it means to be good. But that is perhaps the how humanism looks at it. At least this is how I look at it. It's the interesting thing is that in a human society we have seen quite a few members, and the reality is that different members have different ideas about morality and ethics. Again, because humanism in itself doesn't define what it means to be moral. Humanism doesn't say that, hey, smoking is bad, right? There's no such statement on conduct, on behavior. What humanism says is, as a rational human being, as a person, it is your responsibility to investigate your own conduct and determine for yourself what is good and what's bad. So and we see that you evaluate based on on evidence, you evaluate based on how people around you are feeling, you evaluate based on how you feel, and that determines whether you should do that conduct more, or you should stop and not do it anymore. And that perhaps is the real iterative aspect of humanist ethics. That there's no one telling you what's right or wrong. There's someone telling you, oh, this is how you be a better person, you do more of this. No, it's more of just do the same iterative introspection, and trust that process will make you a better human, or make you more human.
Thank you for that. I've got one more question. I think it's time for one more question. I want to ask you. So, what is one change that you want to bring about in Singapore society through your change-making initiative, and how can AGS and its members help you?
That's something that I've been trying to think about as well. What is one thing? I think if there's one ultimate goal of the human society, or of me, that would be to normalize tough, difficult conversations. I think in Singapore society, we too often prefer to not talk about something, to avoid, quote unquote, rocking the boat. And just like waiting or biding our time, waiting for the right moment to talk about it. And if it's anything I've learned from relationship counseling, is that you make the moment, you don't wait for things to happen. And that involves talking about difficult problems. If you're not able to talk about it, then there's no way that you can identify problems. There's no way that you can even begin to address it. And when I talk about, when I say talk, difficult conversations, it is anything about leaving one's faith, about coming out of the closet, right? About race, gender, religious identity, about discussions of class and politics, and yeah, and I mean, I trust that humanism will be part of that, but I think that is perhaps the ultimate goal, that we can talk about things, and then begin to try and solve some of these problems that individuals, very human individuals, face. How AGS can help? I don't know. I think when we talk about these things, we have to start small first, and we have to start by talking to change makers, like people who are perhaps more I don't say progressive as opposed to conservative, but I say progressive in wanting to make change, right? Wanting to change the status quo. So people who want to see a change in the world, and if we can start there, then maybe we can slowly build a robust system or model of conversation that we can then export to the rest of broader society.
One of the things that I envisioned for this weekly dialogue was really, first round is to get to know all the members, and the second round is to choose specific members to come together to talk about a certain topic. Maybe there's something that we can work out together.
Yeah.
Maybe that we can help to develop that model of conversation through the weekly dialogues we have among our members. Maybe that's something we can explore.
Yeah. I mean, we just sat down, Kim Bing, Vincent, Han, myself, we just sat down last night to talk about what is one model of discourse of, you know, alleviating or mitigating, you know, social friction, and I think this all ties into what we want to be able to achieve, and that is where to talk about sentiment, talk about fiction, talk about problems in a very candid manner, and to borrow Vincent's words, you know, from a place of good faith, right? And that is what we try to do.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so we've come to the end of the Q&A segment. Thank you, Ding Jie, for making the time to answer our questions and letting us get to know a bit better about you and the Humanist Society in Singapore.
Thanks for having me.
We hope that by listening to you, some of our audience members, both present now and those watching this recording, will want to reach out to you and explore possible collaborations or simply just to get to know you better. We now proceed to the last segment of this session, which is Chat with GM. So we can stop the recording here.